So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome for this panel discussion, how to preserve and restore natural ecosystems. My name is Ludovic Sinet. I'm working for Good Tech Lab, and for those who didn't attend the keynote of my colleague Benjamin, we're launching today a global report about how technology can actually help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And among the Sustainable Development Goals, 2 of them are actually focused on the problems related to natural ecosystems. And as you know, last week, the IPBES launched a report about the state of global biodiversity, and we are in a really dire situation. But fortunately, we are lucky today. We have 3 amazing entrepreneurs who are going to tell us about what they're doing to actually work in this field. So I will actually, before we begin, just to let you know, you can ask questions on the app VivaTech, upvote or downvote them, and I will try my best to take the 1 or 2 best questions at the end. So let's go. I will let you the mic, and please tell us what you're doing with the organization and who are you.
Great, I'll start off. So our company is specifically addressing the challenges of climate change. And I'm not getting any slides, that's okay. So everybody here in this room knows about the carbon levels rising, about our corals bleaching, and they can see the people in the street marching, calling for urgent action against destruction of our environment, about extinction of species, and about climate change. And one of the challenges is that we are much better at destroying our ecosystems than we are at restoring them. And over time, this has led to 2 billion hectares of degraded land. And so we now have a 5x challenge to restore that land. And the reason we're so slow, it's not just a simple hardware challenge. It's an end-to-end lack of scalability. So the ecosystem restoration market is set to grow by 700% in the next 10 years. But the tools to serve the demand just don't exist today. And the challenges in ecosystem restoration really are centered around scale, getting broad coverage, but also getting fine detail resolution. And that's linked to the challenge of lack of access to data in this environment, and then physical lack of access to these sites. They're not agricultural plots. These are remote, challenging, wild environments. And so our solution is designed to combine intelligence and automation to address these challenges. We have an analytics platform integrated with an automated planting system using drones to specifically be able to act in challenging environments. So here we are trying to tackle the challenge of the 2 billion hectares of degraded land and to scale that up.
Thank you very much, Susan. Topher?
That's pretty amazing. So also working in the area of ecosystem restoration or protection, one of the most important ways to fight climate change is to keep forests intact. The 2nd largest contributor to climate change, more than all the energy coming from transportation, cars, trucks, planes, ships combined, is from deforestation. And so one of the best ways to protect that is to work with people on the ground to keep these places from being destroyed. And it turns out that people are actually very into that. So our solution at Rainforest Connection is to use sort of passive monitoring, in our case acoustic monitoring, sound, to pick out the sounds of danger, chainsaws, logging trucks, in real time, using old cell phones that we put up in the trees with solar panels and microphones, and increasingly more sensors, to basically stream all the audio to the cloud and pick out these sounds and send real-time alerts to local partners on the ground, usually not governments. Usually this is tribes or NGOs or local communities who have nothing to gain from this rampant illegal logging that's destroying their livelihood and their land. And then they actually can be incentivized to respond in real time. But it's not just about stopping illegal logging, which is actually the gateway activity to so much more destructive activity. It's also about trying to find ways the rest of the world can care more about this, and that's not always from bad news stories, which we're so used to, or from the real, or from actually communicating the scale of these problems, because scale, 10,000 football fields destroyed over the course of a month is actually very hard to visualize. But it's from actually connecting them to what's there. So because we have this data, we're trying to find ways to create live audio streams to the forest, to pick out the sounds of species so that scientists themselves can actually do more studies from afar, and then turn all of these different insights into really a real-time experience of the forest, no matter where you are. And we'll talk more about that. But hey, it's great to meet you guys.
So from rainforest to ocean. I'm the co-founder of a company called BLUEYE Robotics. We develop underwater drones, and our goal is to make the ocean available to everyone. And we started up back in 2015 in Norway, and inspired by aerial drone market that has taken off literally and is available to anyone from kids to professionals today. We want to empower people to explore, to view, to learn, and in the end take care of the ocean in a greater manner. So we launched a product out in the market in December last year, and we have customers and partners from anything from schools, kids in the private sectors, but also to aquaculture and shipping. And across all these sectors, and what's common between all of them is that they gain control over what's going on below the surface. They get information that they need to take smarter and better considerations and decisions for their business or just taking care of the ocean. We all depend on the ocean for our livelihood. 3 billion people across the world are depending on the ocean as their major source for animal protein. And there's so many challenges that the ocean is facing today. Both plastic pollution, it's overfishing, illegal fishing, transportation, sound. And we're drilling. Coming from Norway, which is an oil country, oil economy, we have a lot of competence and knowledge within the marine sector, and to use this for good, to ensure that this competence go into a tool that is available to everyone, and into good projects and people with good intentions is really our goal. And we have been collaborating with the Great Barrier Reef Legacy, using it for research. Last year, they discovered a new species of corals on a depth they haven't been able to go to before. So it's a lot of use cases by making technology accessible, user-friendly, and cheap enough for people to use. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Really amazing projects and really inspiring. But we have quite a business question. I'm wondering about, and I think it's not obvious for many people here, that there is a financial sustainability in your projects regarding business models or raising funds. How do you work it out, and what are your biggest changes regarding financial sustainability?
Well, since we started, we have been collaborating with partners from different sectors who need this technology. There's an immediate need in the aquaculture side, so for instance, we made sure that our investors or the people we collaborate with both open up markets for us, but we solve problems for them. I think nobody wants to be on a sinking ship. I think if you can let people, whether they're from private sector or public sector, be a part of the solution, that's something you want to pay for. And by creating inspiring and grow understanding and learning, that's something that sector or those they will bring with them, if that's answering the question.
Yeah, sure.
I have to say also, I met Christine a few years ago. I'm not sure exactly how many years ago, in Silicon Valley, right before you launched the company, and to go from there to where you are now in that time is very laudable. In Silicon Valley, you hear about a lot of companies that start and don't go anywhere. So to have launched a product as well and have it be useful, that's non-trivial. So well done. In our case, we are a nonprofit. Rainforest Connection is a nonprofit tech startup. And so we've had to be extremely creative about the ways in which we try and fund ourselves. And that has gone through a lot of successes and failures. But what it comes up with is almost like a multifaceted business model, if you can call it that, where sure, it is possible to make donations to do what we do, but everything that we do isn't just about the technology itself. It's also about how do you connect the entire world or people to it, and that becomes a way to do it. So we have an app that allows you to listen to the live sounds of the forest from around the world. It's pretty cool. Check it out. That's not a big way for us to sort of support ourselves, but it does start to tell the story of what we do and the story of what's happening in the forest that much more well. And in doing so, what we found is that there is a lot of excitement around anti-deforestation access of what we do. The truth is that if you can catch loggers, after they show up a couple times, which is hard, but if you catch them, they'll go away for a while. And then you have this amazing sound coming out of the forest, which opens up what we do to bioacoustics, which basically is the study of nature through sound in ways that no one's really been able to do before adding AI to it, which some scientists have compared to the invention of the microscope in terms of what it teaches us about nature. And it turns out that that is a whole new way to apply AI, and technology companies are excited to do that. And so now we're building a coalition of some of the greatest technology companies to be able to address this problem, and they're willing to pay for access to the ability to solve these great problems with their tools. So Google, Huawei, SAP, Hitachi, all these companies are coming together now to actually study nature the same way they studied our behavior for the past 10 years. And hopefully we can pull out some cool insights from that.
Similar to Christine, BioCARBON Engineering is a for-profit organization, and we service a number of different markets. Where we've started is actually the mining market. Some people are surprised about that kind of partnership, but mining, and specifically open cut mining, so coal mining, have large surface areas that they need to restore, and it's not exactly a friendly environment to go back and walk over that land to restore it. So using drones is an obvious solution in that kind of environment. And what's interesting and echoing what's been said is we're collecting obviously a lot of data, and every terabyte of data is improving the accuracy of our machine learning algorithms. And we're able to discover these really interesting things that nobody's ever seen before because they've never tried to look at our natural ecosystems in this way. When you're monitoring down to millimeter resolution, you can see animals sleeping in the sun. You can see all specific weeds and specific plants growing. And so you're able to get a much deeper understanding of an ecosystem, which when you're working in the area that we are, people are very willing to pay for that because understanding, there's the saying, which is, you need to be able to measure something to be able to manage it. You can't manage what you can't measure. And we're enabling people to have better management of their environments and being able to align the markets of large organizations, large mining companies, oil and gas, who are willing to commit to sustainability and improvement of biodiversity of their land. We're able to enable them to actually achieve that.
Thank you very much. So you talked a lot about, you three of you, about partnerships. And I would like you to actually deep dive on this topic and maybe providing to the audience some examples on how you work in partnerships, because the problems that are to be solved, as you said, they cannot be solved by only one actor. You need to work all together. And it's really hard sometimes to actually manage your business and your clients, but also the need for working with also non-profit partnerships like either the local communities, private communities, or the public sector. How do you work it out on that field?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about 2 billion hectares of land, obviously you can't just have mines as your customers. It's much bigger than that. So of course we're providing services to mining companies, but we're also working on projects which are large coastal restoration projects, as an example, where we're looking at mangrove restoration. And in that case, you've got a lot of partners who are engaged in executing on that. You've got governments who typically own the land, who are then having an agreement with a local partner, whether that's an NGO or another organization, who is then managing projects. And then another level, you've then got local seed collectors You've got local people who are building fences or who are maintaining these mangroves. So you have all this complexity of different partners, but that's what actually gives it the robustness. Because if you didn't have those deep connections with people who have a connection to the land over a long period of time, then you're not building sustainability into the project. So although it's complex, it builds robustness into projects. And that's the same in any private organization, building deep relationships with roles in these mining companies so that this becomes a key part of their business going forward is what will lead to success.
Yeah, absolutely. In our case, especially as a nonprofit, we are not just judged by our survival or how well the company itself is doing, but by our impact. That's the most important thing for us. And so at the end of the day, you can't have an impact on stopping deforestation around the world as an organization, in America, where we are. So we rely 100% on our partners to be the ones to actually stop that activity. And it's entirely up to us to find ways to incentivize them and encourage them and help solve their problems, the ones that we are able to. And so, they are actually the most important piece of the whole puzzle for us. And I wouldn't say they're our customers because we are just there to kind of serve them. We're their tech support, if you will. And so, at the end of the day, that's a really big challenge because there's lots of cultural differences, and we just try and focus on the individual issues we're trying to address together. But you have to, when it comes to protecting the forest, you have to acknowledge that these men and women out there who are going and stopping illegal loggers at great risk to themselves and their families are extraordinary climate heroes. They can have, one of them can have more impact than a dozen engineers at Tesla in terms of the amount of carbon offsets. And there's only one moment to do that, and that's now. So it's an honor to work for them and to be doing that. And yeah, that's all it is.
I think when it comes to partnerships, our experience is that we've formed some really strong and valuable partnerships on different levels. So from when we founded the company, and it was the largest focus was on the product development. Of course, we partnered up with design companies and with the University of Trondheim in Norway, but then also partnering up with companies and private actors across sectors to really give them our prototypes and have them telling us what's functional, what's not so good, or what's not the biggest need, and what are their needs, because nobody wants to create a product that's not needed. And this is all about solving challenges, solving problems, and creating value. So we've been working together with search and rescue companies. We've been working together with aquaculture, with students and schools, researchers on environmental monitoring, local fishermen, harbors and marinas and shipping companies, and also expedition cruises. So it's a broad spectrum of different partners being brutally honest, telling us what's good and what's not so good about the product, and then helping us out making it eventually. And then you come to the last phase when the product is launched, and you have to ensure that your business model is sustainable and it is going to work long term, and also think about continuously developing and staying ahead with your product. And then we collaborate with companies making AI solutions. We're really intrigued, thinking ahead, and if you can imagine, you have your underwater drone. This is a super fun tool to use. You control it from your own smartphone and get live video up to the surface, and it goes down to 150 meters. But what if you could add a layer telling you something, giving you more information about what you see and about what you explore? Like if you pass a fish, you get information on what sort of fish. Is this, a fish that you should avoid fishing because it's decreasing, or it's, or is it, so to add all these different layers of technology and software can make the product just so more valuable, and it's super exciting to work with partners to do so. I think there's no company who can develop it all themselves and have all competence in-house, so partnerships are really key.
And going further than partnerships, like we just saw that we actually, to restore and preserve natural ecosystems, we need to act on many leverage points and many different actors and players in your ecosystems and many stakeholders. Going forward, like to be sure that in 10 years from now we are on the right path to actually solve the biodiversity issues, how do you see the role of the public sector versus the private sector, including also yourselves, entrepreneurs? But what do you think is missing? How we can go further? And yeah, what's missing in a nutshell?
I think it's. I think we again come back to partnerships, really, to crack the code of how to work efficiently together. So everyone wants to own the solution, but I think the solution really comes to life when we do work together and challenge each other instead of hard competition. Yeah, so especially in the sweet spot between, I'm not sure if you can call that a sweet spot, but the cross between public and private sector, I think that's where the magic can happen, if they see how they can efficiently work together and not against each other.
Yeah. Just to follow up on Christine's point there, and previously, partnership is also about like realizing what you should not build or should not try and do yourself. Even if you think you can do better or you could do better, it's the solution that's in front of you is a great opportunity for partnership. And so I try our best not to build things other ones already have, or when another solution comes along, to even abandon work we've done in order to work with other people who are there, including some people who are in the audience right now, who build similar stuff to us. But yeah, when it comes to private sector and public sector engagement, the truth is that we don't get to see the public sector very much when we're off in the field in the rainforest around the world. The public sector is not, the government is not very involved, or if they are, it's not generally very well accepted by the people. And so we tend to be able to skip around that in those places. And in some cases, people establish their own governance. But that, of course, is not a long-term solution. The only way to, the best way to inspire the government to take action is to have the citizens themselves take action. That's usually when the government comes and steps in. So that's the sort of collaboration we try and foster in these areas.
Just thinking of all these people cheering over there. For me, to get the yay moment where you actually achieve something, it really relies on private sector. Governments play an enormous role, but they take a little while to get something done. But what they can do is they can introduce regulation which incentivizes private sector to act. And private sector can act within weeks to months. You know, if private sector wants to do something, they can commit funds, they can put financing forward, and they can say, right, we're doing this project, we're restoring this area here. But when you don't have the stick, the incentives are not as high. You know, private companies have an obligation to their shareholders. They also have an obligation to sustainability. But when you regulate the market, you make it a level playing field. Everyone has to act in the same way. And so nobody's disadvantaged by doing a good thing. And that should be the way the world works. You shouldn't be disadvantaged in anything that you do, whether you're public or private, for doing the right thing, the sustainable thing, a good thing for Earth. And so for me, the role of governments really is introducing robust regulation, enforcing it, and enabling innovation in the environmental space to really evolve and to accelerate in all the progressions.
Some to that too. I think also, the stick is a great way to incentivize the private sector to do things. But I think all of us here are also realizing that creative solutions to show the ways in which the tools the private sector is responsible for, like the things they're doing, finding ways to make their stories come across as part of the solution is a great way to get them to move toward it. And there's no single solution to that. Sometimes it forces you to take like little steps one at a time. But like even Christine talking about ways that you can use AI and augmented reality to tell the story of the ocean in that much more detail and bring people's imagination to life. There's so many companies that would love to be a part of that if you can bring their sort of work into it. And so that's the ways in which they can be incentivized as well.
Okay. Or if you want to react, Christine? Okay. So thank you very much. We have one question from the public that you can read. How do you choose the region or ecosystem to restore? Which are the factors that determine your target projects? Do you think that restoration can overcome destruction? Big questions. Please.
Yeah, I think a bit of us. Whoever asked that question, really great question. There are a lot of factors that go into ecosystem restoration, and some of them are macro. So if you plant a tree around the tropics, you're sequestering nearly twice as much carbon as if you do anywhere else. So when you're looking at drawing down carbon really quickly, trees grow faster at the tropics. And so that makes a logical sense. You've then got to look at the success of a project and financing and the partnerships. Are there partnerships in place with local knowledge there to make it a success? So then it gets into the complexity of, okay, what makes a good project and what makes long-term success, not just an immediate photo-taking moment. So yeah, really, really great question, and I'd love to chat to whoever it was afterwards, because clearly there's some backing behind it.
Yeah, restoration, especially when it comes to forest landscapes, is really important because we rarely get invited to work in a place that isn't already somewhat degraded. And once you can, draw a line, and the people there have control over it, then there's many ways they can actually, profit from restoring it. And the more I look at the places where we work and see the areas that have been degraded in the past and are not growing fast enough, it makes me want to talk to you about the ways that they can actually bring it back. But it's not just about forest cover. It's also about biodiversity and being able to establish these corridors between one area and the next. That stuff is not fully understood, but it's understood well enough to know that there's a crisis point there. And so when we choose our partners, because luckily people are always asking us, which is a sign that there's a big problem out there, and our incapacity to have scaled more than we want to so far. But it's, we choose places based on whether we think they're going to have an impact. And that's not true for everybody. People can really want a solution, but they have to have the organization in place to put it there, and also the determination, because protecting environments is dangerous work at this moment in time. And also the organization to be able to restore it is a whole other level of administrative skills that takes a lot of determination.
Yeah, our technology is really used, when it comes to choosing an area to restore or to monitor in our case, it's really, there's as many as possible wherever, all around the world. So, but we try to make sure that we, as a company, we choose, of course, who we want to collaborate with. But then we make our technology available to everyone. So it's in the choice of partners and which projects we go into, we seek to collaborate with trustworthy partners that can show results from previous work, but also go into areas that we know there's a pressing need to gain information and to monitor and have a closer look at the ecosystem or marine wildlife. Our drones are also used to map marine litter, often along the coast of anywhere from the US to UK, Norway, Australia. And we try really to make sure that when that happens, that it gets an impact and that we link those who are doing the mapping up with local partners or actors who can actually do some cleanups or plant out new corals. So to maximize the impact as much as possible is really the most important.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, time is out. So I'd like to thank you all for your interventions, and I hope you learned something today about how you can actually restore and preserve natural ecosystems with technology. And yeah, time is out. Thank you very much.